Happy Friday, English 113. I wanted to make sure I checked in with you before the weekend because I've been getting a few questions about some of the things in the class, and I want to make sure you go into the weekend with all clarity that you need. So a couple of things. One, this third and fourth poem are two separate poems, right? And it's the idea that we're exploring point of view. So we could potentially take one event from multiple perspectives, right? So we're trying to identify an event, and it can be as simple as a couple having an argument in the rain, right? A man and a woman, two women, two men, whatever it might be, having an argument in the rain, right? You're going to write one poem from the perspective of the man in that story, and then the fourth poem then would be from the perspective of the woman. So they're two different poems about the same event coming from two different perspectives. And it's not simply that you just exchange the characters out of that scene. They should feel like standalone poems, and they could really survive on their own. But it's the idea that this one central event has brought these two people together, and now they're each in a separate poem telling their stories. And that was what was true also for the discussion board exercise. It was, let's take that bath scene with the father and son, and on the discussion board I wanted you to look at, so we have the father in that scene, we have the son, it's being told from the father's perspective. What 6 lines could you write from the son's perspective? And it's not just changing the author's lines, it's creating a whole new set of 6 lines about what that little boy was experiencing in the bathtub. So these moments, both poem 3 and poem 4, really should feel like new poems each, right? That they're just centered around this one event though. So I hope that makes sense. And please feel free to email me over the weekend to say, I still don't know what you're talking about. I'm also really going to try to put up a sample that I've done myself, some original work, so you can see what this looks like. I have wanted to have so much more time for poetry and to be writing with you than I've been able to have this term. And I'm disappointed about that. So the other piece is that I've begun working through your poems, okay? So you've posted now 2 poems. The first poem was a model, the imitation poem. You guys did a really great job on those. I mean, I thought you created some really nice original work that was just inspired by the poems that you were reading. The imitations are really spot on. So I'm beginning to give you suggestions on that first poem. The second poem then was the metaphor poem, right? And you had a few different options to put that in. You created some things out of that I was not expecting as well. I had a really good time reading your metaphors, and the thing I said most about metaphor, right, is that it needs to be this like exact, direct, crazy comparison, right? That we make great meaning out of, because you wouldn't usually compare these two things. So it's not a description, it's not comparing things that are usually compared. It is that the stark contrast of the two things you're comparing creates the meaning, right? So I said that a lot in the discussion board. I also said to avoid cliches, and I have to say cliche a lot in this class because it's just natural. We end up going to these word packages that we've heard all of our lives, like cold as ice, she was my angel. And the problem with language like that is that it's been so overused, it doesn't even have the same impact anymore. We understand something cold as ice, but we don't even feel that anymore. We've heard it so many times that it just doesn't have any impact anymore. So I want you creating new word packages that you haven't heard before. So you'll hear me talk a lot about cliche, and that's just putting language and ideas together that don't usually go together, but making new meaning out of them, and to try not to fall back on those overused words and phrases that we hear all the time. So really nice job on those metaphors. So that second poem was about playing with this idea of metaphor and simile, and I thought that you were really playful in that next group of poems. And then you'll post 3 and 4 this weekend. You'll write one more original poem, it looks like, next week, and then we're going to revise all of the poems for our poetry portfolio, which will be due at the end of week 5. We'll have started the fiction unit at that point, even as we're revising the poems. So things you've heard in your peer review, comments you get from me on your poems, they're all going to be revised for that portfolio. And then that portfolio is graded on how much progress your poems have made from the original draft to what you end up putting in your portfolio. So what I began to find, though, reading through your poems, is that it takes an incredible amount of time to handwrite all the feedback I want to give you. So you'll find about halfway through poem 1, and then I think I'm going to use the same thing for poem 2. I'm creating audio files, which is me basically speaking as I'm looking at your poem, and the cursor is pointing to certain things. It's a free program. It's called Jing. So it just opens up on your screen and you hear my audio talking through your poem. It's just going to make things, it's like us having a conversation. It just makes it a lot easier. You can hear my comments. The writing of all those comments, it's just, I want to say too much. It's going to take too long. So I want to use the audio Jing files for the rest of poem 1 and poem 2. So I'm going to spend the afternoon, evening into Saturday, Sunday for feedback on both poem 1 and poem 2. You'll have plenty of time to revise those before your portfolio. So I know you only listened to a bit of this. My last video only got 5 hits, and I know I was at least one of them. So I'm hoping you're watching this and what I've said has provided some clarity. The other thing I got questions about was grading. I try really hard to give you lots of comments when I grade, but if you're not understanding why you're getting certain grades, please talk to me. I thought your reading responses have been really strong, so we've done 2 of those. And then your discussion boards, what I continue to encourage you to do where I don't see the work happening is in those peer responses. Those need to be, I say, like 7 to 8 sentences each. So it makes it feel like you're truly engaging with your peer, you're pointing to specifics. So I'd like to see a little bit more out of those peer responses. And when you're doing a peer review, to really answer each of the questions in that peer review so you know you've really looked at their poem in full. So, but yeah, so if you're seeing yourself falling below sort of that 80 line on your peer reviews and your discussion board responses, it's that I would like a little bit more from you. But I am fully available to talk to you about any of your grades. I've had a couple of really good phone conversations with students this week about the class. We can set up a time, we can chat. Anyways, I wanted to say some of those things before the weekend. Please feel free to be in touch with me if you're confused. Try not to fall behind on submitting work just because you're not sure what to do. Get on the phone with me. Let's have a phone conversation. Okay? So I look forward to seeing what happens with poem 3 and poem 4 this weekend. I will be getting you your feedback on the other 2 poems. You can check your grades. They're just about up to date in the grade center, so make sure you're tracking your progress. And I will talk to you soon. All right, thanks everyone.